picking up where we left off here. This is a short bit. I might just edit this on here. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. Returning to the subject of one's best clothes on the frontier, I have mentioned coats already, but to add a bit more information, coats of the 18th century have the top of the center back vents, side pleatings of the skirts, and pocket line on the same level around the body. This varies a little in height. The seams of the coat are stitched down to this level. The necks of the early collarless coats are usually finished with a half-inch band tapering off to nothing. They show a little picture here. Give you an idea. Something along those lines. Waistcoats, sometimes called jackets, especially when they have sleeves, were cut on the same lines as the coat, but always on the straight of the material, with less width in the skirts and no pleats. From the middle of the century, variations in waistcoat styles were worn for undress. This latter comment applies more to the fashionable undress being what was worn in one's home rather than out in public. Casual. But it would certainly seem to apply to the lower classes as well. From the second half of the century, with the fronts of the coat cut away and the shorter waistcoat, much more of the breeches were shown, and consequently they became more fitted to the thigh and over the knee. From 1750, also the center front fly was replaced by falls, a flap opening. Despite this, from what I can tell, the center front fly was still used into the 1770s. For most of the century, the length was to just below the knee. The purpose of the knee band, aside from finishing off the leg, was to hold up the stocking. It was fastened snugly with a buckle or tie, but never, to the best of my knowledge, did it close loosely with a button as is seen on many modern-made breeches. I don't know if it means breeches, but it says breeches. That's how it's spelled. Trousers were made much the same as breeches, save the legs were looser in fit and went to just above the ankle. Trousers were worn by working men from very early on in the century. Smith's description includes pumps of their own manufacture. Whether these shoes differed significantly in construction from those made by trained cordwainers is uncertain, but I doubt it. I expect the difference would be more in quality of workmanship. In southern Appalachia, the practice of making homemade shoes persisted well into the 20th century. The common shoe of the period was normally straight-lasted, that is, made with the right and left being identical. Modern sources often indicate that it was a common practice to alternate the feet on which they were worn so they would wear evenly. Interesting. Years ago, I often heard the docents at the milliner's shop in colonial Williamsburg describe this as being simple common sense, like rotating one's tires. While it may have been done, it is unlikely that it was common. Mr. Garsault, in his Art du Cordonnier, the art of the cordwainer, I have no idea what a cordwainer is, must be a shoemaker, cobbler or something, published in 1767, indicated that some very fastidious, i.e. fashion conscious to the extreme, people would do so in order to preserve the symmetrical look of their shoes. But he went on to say that doing so was very uncomfortable and may not even have been truly economical, as it stretched the seams and actually caused them to wear out faster. Of the many original 18th century common shoes which have been examined by Mr. Al Segudo of colonial Williamsburg, himself an accomplished cordwainer, the vast majority show wear patterns indicating that they were not rotated. And I am pleased to report that the docents at the milliner's shop have corrected their presentation. Having tried it with my own straight-lasted shoes, I found that I can confirm half of Mr. Garsalt's opinion. After only 1 day of wear, the shoes were no longer interchangeable without extreme discomfort. Since it is unlikely that the people of the frontier would be fashion conscious to the point of being concerned about preserving the symmetrical look of their shoes, I doubt they ever rotated them. Dodgers describe shoe packs as being like moccasins, made from a single piece of leather with the exception of a tongue piece on the top of the foot, which was about 2 inches broad and circular at the lower end, and to which the main piece of leather was sewed with a gathering stitch. The seam behind was like that of a moccasin, and sole was sometimes added. Picture there. That might be comfortable around the house, but I couldn't imagine wearing that outdoors. Knitted stockings of the period were similar to the ones we have today and as comfortable, but the more common stocking was sewn from cloth, and the seams can be uncomfortable in shoes, though less so in moccasins. Stuffing the bottoms of woolen leggings into the tops of shoes or moccasins served as a sort of country stocking, and would at least keep the heel of the shoe from galling the ankle. Actually, I can find few references to stockings on the frontier, perhaps because barefoot seems to be the norm for women, children, and often even men. Moccasins offered little protection, but were apparently deemed better than nothing. The reason I mention stockings at all is that the normal practice when extra warmth was needed was to stuff the bottoms of the moccasins with deer hair, moss, leaves, etc. Try it. You won't like it. Let me see, there's a signal out here. Okay. Finally, please note that the eyewitness descriptions of the frontiersmen put them in broad-brimmed hats. No Scots bonnets, no coonskin caps. While I often wear the bonnet, I am the first to admit that there are probably more of them being worn in America today than there were 200 years ago. And when absolute authenticity is required, I shift to the felt hat. And while the days when everyone who wanted to portray any kind of frontiersman would don a coonskin cap seem to be over, I feel obliged to comment on it. In so doing, I am indebted to my friend Dr. William H. Wells for conducting as nearly an exhaustive study on this particular piece of clothing as anyone might be willing to attempt. His final conclusions are as follows. In the early 19th century, Davy Crockett and the Russian Revolution caused an upsurge in the wearing of animal skin hats or caps, especially the coonskin cap of Mr. Crockett. This, along with the famous Battle of New Orleans, which linked the Kentucky rifle to the backwoodsmen and to their coonskin caps, may have been the proverbial final straw. Once incorrect history is made popular, it is difficult to sort fact from fiction, and particularly from emotions. In summary, I believe the vast majority of the 18th century backwoodsmen Longhunters share the common experience of wearing the wide-brimmed felt hat. The few exceptions occurred when a backwoodsman lost his hat or wanted to demonstrate friendship with an Indian tribe. End of quote. A new trend seems to be emerging, however, which I blame squarely on the 1993 film Last of the Mohicans. One of the greatest movies of all time. That is, going hatless. While on a hunt, I do not doubt that a man would dress however he was comfortable, and dispensing with his hat is certainly an option. But in the 18th century and well into the 20th century, a man without a hat was presumed to have lost either his hat or his mind. And we're on to the next section. Love you, God bless.